Hi, my name is Alan Merville, and I'm really excited to be here with you today for the Advanced Gospel Keys Masterclass. My goal for today's masterclass is really to show you a different perspective and approach towards harmony and music as a whole. Now, there's a few basic fundamentals that we need to know before moving to the more complex topics. So it might be a little less interesting for those of you who are already familiar with it. If you are, please skip ahead to the next section. All right, we have a lot of fun things to cover. So without any further ado, let's jump into it. So an inversion is when you have a chord tone other than your root as your bass note. So if I play a C triad in root position, if I have the third as the bass note, which is E, that'll be first inversion. If I have the fifth as the bass note, which is G, that'll be second inversion. So a chord tone is basically notes that are part of the chord, so it's pretty self-explanatory. But seventh chords have inversions as well. The main difference between a seventh chord and a triad is there's an extra note, so that means that there's an extra inversion. So triads have root, first and second inversion, whereas seventh chords have root, first, second, and third inversion. Okay, and so inversions for me really provide a different texture, a different color, a different feeling, right? So if I take this progression, we'll do a C add 2, going to a C7, going to a F add 2, a D9, a G add 2, a C7, F major 9, a E, A minor 11, a D add 2, a D minor 7 flat 5, and then to a C. So we'll do all those in root position, and then I'll play them again with inversions just so you get an idea of the different feeling and the different texture that inversions provide. Okay, now let's play the same progression with some inversions. What are drop twos? So drop two is basically when you take the second highest note and play it down an octave. So for example, if I take a C major 7 chord, all right, the second highest note would be G. So if I take the G, play it down an octave, this is a C major in drop 2 position. So what you want to do is get to a point where you can play your drop 2s in every inversion. So if I take the C major 7 drop 2, I should be able to invert it up, then invert it up again, and again. And if you find yourself having trouble with figuring out what the inversions are, what I suggest doing is just playing it in its original form, right? And then dropping down the second highest note. And then inverting it up again, and then dropping down the second highest note. So on, until you're comfortable enough to know by memory where the drop twos are. So the idea is you want to be able to play all of your drop twos, right? So after you get comfortable with the C major 7, you want to go ahead and mess around with the C7, and then the C minor 7, and then the C minor 7 flat 5, and then the C diminished, right? So after your C major 7, you want to move on to your C minor 7. Do those inversions. Then your C dominant. C minor 7 flat 5. C diminished. right? And so the next step from that is doing the same exact thing in all 12 keys. So there's a few different steps that I like to do that help me get comfortable with drop twos and help me get to the point where I can use them in my actual playing. And so what I'll do is I'll take the metronome and put it at a very slow tempo at like 40 BPMs and go through my drop twos in every inversion, but I'm playing specific dynamics and I'm also practicing it without the sustain pedal. Reason I don't use the sustain pedal is because you get really dependent on the sustain pedal. If you try to play legato or like smooth without the sustain pedal, it's much more difficult to execute that sound when you don't have the sustain pedal. If you do have the sustain pedal, obviously, you just keep your foot on it and you're able to pick your hands up and it's still sustaining. But if you take your foot off of the sustain pedal, and you're still trying to make it smooth, that's building finger control, right? And so that's giving you complete control over your sound, control over your touch, dynamics, and things like that. So those are the things that I like to practice, whether it's with scales or drop twos or in inversions, because at the end of the day, my goal is to have as much control over my playing as possible, right? So let's do that. Let's take the metronome at 40 BPM and we'll use the E flat minor 7 chord as our kind of practice chord. Okay, so we're at 40 BPMs. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do, right, is subdivide my rhythms. So right now, 40 BPMs, these are my quarter beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And so I need to be able to play this E flat minor 7 drop 2 in every inversion in quarter beat rhythms. Then I also have to subdivide it and play it in eighth note rhythms. So I have to do 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and etc. After I do my eighth note rhythms, I have to move to triplets, right? So triplet, triplet, da, da. After my triplets, I move on to sixteenths, right? So 1 and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and right? So all this is really for building finger control, rhythm control, and being able to play these concepts with, honestly, with different rhythms, because you're never really going to play them all in triplets or all in sixteenths or all in eighth notes or all in one thing, essentially, right? And so we want to practice what we want to execute. And so I want to be able to play multiple rhythms that I hear or feel or just whatever, right? And so it only makes sense to practice that. Okay, so let's try it out. So let's do quarters. 1, 2. Okay, so keep in mind that I'm intentionally playing it legato, playing it smoothly. And so before I start the exercise, I have to decide within myself how I'm going to play it. And then it's my job to execute that, right? So let's say if I wanted to play it staccato, then I'd have to do 2. Okay, cool. So let's move on to eighths. All right, so I'm still doing it legato. All right, let's do our triplets. Let's do our 16ths. So the next thing you want to do after you play them individually, you want to play them back to back simultaneously, right? So I want to be able to go from quarter to eighth to triplet to 16th to triplets to whatever. So now the next thing that I'll do is like a rhythmic improv type of thing and add skips on top of that. So instead of going inversion by inversion by inversion, I'll skip around, right? And so the reason why I do that is because when I execute these type of chords in real life, it's not always inversion, inversion, inversion. The way that I use drop twos oftentimes is I'm harmonizing a melody with drop two voicings, right? So if the melody is, right? Or let's use a different example. If the melody is, so then I would harmonize it like this with the E flat minor 7 drop 2. And so it's important for me to practice being able to maneuver around the keyboard with that one specific voicing. And then the last thing that I'll add is grace notes, right? So I'll do the same improv where I'm skipping around and doing different rhythms, but now I'll add grace notes to it. So just like before, right, you want to take the same ideas, the same concepts, and work them out in every key and in every harmonic quality. So you want to go from E flat minor to E flat major, to E flat diminished, to E flat minor 7 flat 5, and do the same rhythmic ideas where you're jumping up and down and doing the skips. Okay, so now the next thing that I'll add to this E flat minor 7 drop 2 concept is I'll add a 5. So a 5 of E flat. So now instead of just playing E flat minor 7, we're playing B flat 7 to E flat minor 7, right? And we're also doing that in every inversion as well. So it's B flat 7. So we have our third, our flat 7, our 1, and our 5th going to E flat minor. And now we invert it. Invert it again. Invert it again. So you want to take the same ideas we did for the previous exercise and you want to apply them to this 5 of going to E flat concept. Okay. Then when you get comfortable with that, the next thing to do is to add a 5 to the B flat. So now we're going to do actually a minor 2/5 of E flat, which is what it's going to turn out to be. It's going to be an F minor 7 flat 5 going to B flat 7 and then going to the E flat minor 7. Now real quick before we do it, the reason why it's a minor 2/5 and not called a 2/5 just generally is because we're going to an E flat minor and we're using the chords from the E flat harmonic minor scale to get to it, right? And so the E flat harmonic minor scale, these are the notes. Right? Oh, I'm missing one. Okay, and so the 2 would be F, right? So we go from F, we skip 1, we go to the 3rd, and instead of a 5 of F, it's a flat 5, because there's no C natural in E flat minor. And then the 7, the flat 7 is E flat, right? Then we have a B flat 7. That's also part of the scale. Then we go to our 1, E flat. So the reason why I want to point that out is because a 2/5 of E flat is an F minor going to B flat, going to E flat, right? But a minor 2/5 is an F minor flat 5 going to B flat, going to E flat. So we will take our F minor 7 flat 5 and drop 2 voicing, right? Resolve it to B flat 7, and then resolve it to E flat minor 7. Okay. And then invert that up. And then invert that up. And then invert it up one more time. So we started off by just doing it as an exercise, right? By just taking one chord and figuring out what the drop 2 was. And then we added a 5 to it, and then we added a 2/5. So now we're getting into a more realistic and more musical way to actually use this concept, as opposed to just, we're just learning this one chord and this one voicing, right? So after you get comfortable with the minor 2/5 of E flat, what I would do is change the harmonic qualities around. So instead of a F minor 7 flat 5, I would do an F minor 7 going to a B flat 7, and maybe going to an E flat major, right? So the concepts don't change, the voice leading, none of that stuff changes. The only thing that's changing is the harmonic qualities. And I would mess around with that in all 12 keys, right? So the idea is we want to get comfortable with drop 2s and get comfortable with this concept of using drop 2 voicings and maneuvering our way through multiple changes, because in order to understand the stuff that we're about to get into, you really have to have a good understanding of drop 2s and what drop 2s look and sound like.